All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. So welcome to our training exploration. So today's session is sponsored by ALA's Learning Roundtable. And just a quick plug for the Learning Roundtable. Uh, we are one of ALA's roundtables, and what we do is we try to promote quality continuing education and staff development for library personnel. We try to help folks network with one another. Um, we serve as your source for staff development and continuing education assistance, publications, materials, trainings, and activities. And we want to be your advocate for quality library staff development and continuing education at both the local and national levels. My name is Garrison, and I will be facilitating today's conversation. But really, it's a chance for folks to talk through things as a group, share ideas, share strategies, share challenges. And in particular, today, we are focusing on upskilling your staff. Um, so I have a few questions kind of prepared, but as the conversation unfolds, if you have your own questions or if things kind of unfold in their own way, fantastic. Um, but what I thought we could start with is I'd be curious to know, like, from folks, when you think about upskilling your staff, what types of strategies do you typically incorporate, or how do you go about upskilling your staff? And I would say if you would like to use the hand raise function in Zoom, if you just select the react button, hit raise hand. So if you want to respond, just use the hand raise function, and then we'll kind of call on folks in order and go from there. If your microphone is maybe not working, you can also feel free to respond in the chat, and I can certainly read messages out loud. But again, to start with, first question is, what strategies do you use for upskilling your staff? Or how do you go about incorporating upskilling for your staff? So I can start while folks think about what they do, what they might want to do. So something that we do a lot in my current job and previous jobs is we try to implement cross training across departments in the library or just across different roles. So giving folks the opportunity to shadow other jobs in the library, other opportunities, build new skills, either whether it's for maybe someone just kind of wants to break out of their usual routine and maybe explore a different aspect of library work. Maybe someone has different professional development goals, getting a chance to try new things. So we've done a lot of like cross training kinds of things. But Rena, if you wanna share.
Oh, I was just gonna chime in and say I was gonna say cross train too, namely for a couple of reasons. It really helps in that abducted by aliens instance when, you never know if somebody has to leave work for a week or 2 weeks due to personal circumstances. And, we've had instances where like in electronic resources management, vendors were contacting just one person. And when they had to go away on an extended leave, that really left us in a bind. And the second thing is, I think it builds a really holistic understanding for people of how a library works and how these functions interact with other roles. So I'm a huge, huge fan of cross training. Thanks.
No, thank you. Couple of comments in the chat. And again, please feel free to use the hand raise function if you want to share out loud. But Alan said that we've offered professional development funds, but as I imagine, many of us are encountering those funds were cut in this past year. but also cross training and internal opportunities across the institution. Jessica said identifying a baseline competency can be helpful, um, and also being targeted since not everyone needs the same level in my institutional context. So that's great as well. What else have folks done, or what strategies have they incorporated? Dorothy.
Yes, we also have done basic competency baselines, uh, but also job shadowing as a way to learn uh, throughout the organization. This is for public library. Uh, and another thing is creating a variety of teams, and then within that team structure to say, coordinate a summer reading program. There's a lot of mentoring going on to upskill folks so that they could take on the leadership role next year. So those were some of the things my organization had worked on through the years that were successful.
Awesome, thank you. Maureen.
It's similar to the cross training, except using an opportunity that arose unexpectedly. We had a we have a colleague who will be going out on leave in our special collections. So we ended up using that as an opportunity to train the reference staff to teach with special collections. So I think it pulls in both the idea of cross training and targeting.
Awesome, thank you. Does anyone else want to share some of the strategies or ways that they've gone about kind of incorporating upskilling in their staff? All right. So maybe a next question can be like, how do you identify what are the right or the best opportunities in your library for incorporating some kind of upskilling? Um, so what ways have you done to identify the right person or the right opportunity to incorporate upskilling in some fashion? I'll let folks marinate on that for a moment. Lindsay.
So I would say listen to what people are asking for. Like, say, if you're combining the reference and the circulation desk and you're not familiar with a certain policy because you're trained on one and not the other, you could either do like a one-on-one, like here's what's going on, or you could offer it maybe as a more formal opportunity. But I always wanted to listen to what people were really asking for or looking for what the problems are at the library, including like maybe I worked in an academic library, like student feedback. Like what are they saying on the survey? Do they say whenever they go someplace, then ask this certain question, they're not able to get an answer? That would be an opportunity as well. And I really just want to keep people happy in their jobs. And one of the ways you can keep people happy is by making sure they know the stuff they need to know. I never like saying, I don't know. Like I can follow back with you, or, we can maybe direct you to somebody else, but you always want to give someone that particular answer right away if you can. So yeah, I always want to listen to the people that work in the library and listen to the patrons and see if we can identify some problems, maybe solve them that way.
Thank you. A comment from Jessica in the chat, talking with managers to identify gaps or needs. Um, and Ginny mentioned I look out for gaps or skills plateaus with my staff. When I begin to identify those areas, I look for additional training to support/expand. Um, Maybe that's also a good kind of tie-in question. When you think about upskilling, is it often driven by a manager in the organization, or is it like an individual staff member identifying like, oh, I want to build my skills or my comfort in this thing? Um, does your institution tend to do one or the other, or is it a mix of both?
I'll jump in. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So I work at a pretty large academic library at a very large research institution. We have many libraries just on our campus. And so because of our size and I would say, variation, the wide landscape of different skills and roles, we actually have a professional development committee within our library. And I have been elected chair of said committee this year. But the committee has not been around all that long. And I think there's just kind of some vague notions as to what the committee should be doing versus what they are doing. It was kind of like, hey, we need this, go for it kind of thing. And so, as chair, I'm working on hopefully, kind of hammering down a little bit more of, goals, documentation, charge, things like that. Um, I know in the past, this committee has sent out surveys, at various times to say, regardless of what your role is, regardless of if you're a student worker, all the way to like top administration, like what are you seeing among us? Or, what do you think we could do a refresher on? Are maybe customer service skills, they could use a little polishing up, things like that. Um, One thing I will just say about that though is there's not always a lot of engagement or participation in the survey. It kind of waxes and wanes. And so it might be a good idea, especially if folks can, uh, respond anonymously. Just be very thoughtful about the time of year or semester if you're an academic institution that you send that survey out, because I really think that timing plays a big part in it. If you send something out like the week before finals and you're expecting all of your academic librarians to respond, like it just kind of depends.
Fantastic. Thank you. Comment from Diana in the chat. I also try to anticipate institutional needs and developing areas for curricular support and ask team members what they're hearing from faculty/seeing in the classroom. I lead our instructional team. Right now, there are a lot of requests for helping students and instructors navigate AI, information literacy, and AI literacy and information ethics, which I work at an academic library and very much so with the exact same thing. So we're developing new competencies in that area. Same with areas like data literacy, digital humanities, news literacy, and media literacy. We embrace a meta literacies approach to our instructional portfolio. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. I feel like there is like always new things coming in libraries, new technology, new tools, or just new like ideas floating around. So it feels like we're always having to like all doing upskilling in some way in response to something. Um, Diana mentioned AI. I'm curious, like, has your library like done anything systemic toward helping staff build any kind of skills with AI literacy or even talking to patrons about AI?
Hi, everyone. Right now, we're mostly in discussions. We did some early workshops and training sessions, mostly for faculty, a couple of years ago when ChatGPT first landed. And now that we're a couple of years in, we don't have an institutional policy around AI and student use of AI. It depends on the faculty departments and individual faculty. But we're hearing that there needs to be more engagement both by faculty and then for students around kind of understanding the basic affordances and how the tools are developed and what they can do and what they don't really successfully do. So we have some modules or tutorials embedded already in our Integrations 100 Learning Foundations class. And so we've been thinking about bumping out the module around, information ethics or, evaluating resources to include more on AI. And we're also in discussions with some faculty around some additional workshops and training resources we can develop. We have a couple of assignments that we do offer around using Adobe Firefly currently to look at image manipulation and how easily information can be changed. So how do they do reverse image searches? What does this mean when they're encountering so much content online that might be either AI generated or manipulated? But I feel like we're scratching the surface still. There's just a lot to cover. So looking, I think, right now for partners institutionally that we can have a bigger impact with. That's where we are. I'd be interested in hearing what other people's approaches are too, though.
I'm curious if anyone from like a public library perspective want to share how they've kind of incorporated upskilling related to AI. So like the way it's affecting us in academic libraries might look very different. So I'm curious, like, what have conversations or like upskilling or just any kind of training looked like at your library? If you're in a public library, what's it looked like for AI? A couple of comments in the chat. We have like an interest group in the library that hosts brown badge library employees on AI topics. Some of us are attending AI webinars. Interesting to ask some presenters about the permission/privacy literacy issues. And we're working towards a more formal set of competencies on AI literacy. We've hosted various workshops for employees just so they can increase their own familiarity with how Gen AI works.
Hey there, my name is Jane. I think I can speak to this, but from a slightly different perspective. I'm a library instruction and ed tech consultant with the Massachusetts library system, and I'm doing a lot with AI. I started about 6 weeks after ChatGPT came out. And so I regularly go out to public libraries who have requested staff training on AI. And most of what sort of the requests that are coming in from the public library directors and staff that I work with are just sort of to get that baseline familiarity with the terms and the tools. We do some hands-on activities, but that's not always really the focus. What people do really ask me to focus on, of course, are all the many concerns about AI. And so we talk about them through the lens of the ALA core values. And I find that I see somebody mention privacy in the chat. I find that folks are really concerned about the privacy and the sort of intellectual property copyright issues and environmental impact. So just from my perspective, that's what I tend to see a lot of folks thinking about, as well as use cases in public libraries, right? We're all trying to figure out how we might actually practically use it too.
Awesome, thank you. Anyone else want to share their perspective? So maybe we can transition to a different question. I'm curious, how do you balance helping your staff build new skills, um, doing things like cross-training or job shadowing or what have you, while also ensuring that everyone's able to keep up with all their regular duties in the library? So how do you balance letting staff build new skills, giving them time to learn and train while also making sure that all their regular job duties are met. Or is that a challenge no one's able to successfully solve? So one comment in the chat, I was hoping for some good tips. Um, Jenny said, I schedule training time that is solely for training. Dorothy.
Um, I guess the way I look at it is it's something that is both an art and a science. So it's asking those kind of key organizational skills of what's working, what's not working, and what can be done differently to be more effective. So having each person focus in on that for their tasks and programming, etc., balancing their schedule. Um, so it's kind of inviting them to really think about what do they need and uh, what's kind of working here, where can they reduce, and having team conversations. I found that if I got my staff together and we talk about these issues, where could we reduce some time, staff time over here to be able to have more time for pursuing online learning or something. Um, and staff are there, they seem to come up with solutions, not perfectly, but really having that at the front of their minds. What can we reduce here to be able to fit in more learning or fit in other programming? So it's putting it on them, and having that, giving them as much support as possible to do that, and checking in on a regular basis. So those were some of the things that worked. And I would say it kind of, when it, when everybody's kind of working on it, you start helping each other. Um, you know, let's go to this workshop together, or are you going to the state conference together? Let's go to these sessions together. So a real community of learning. So just a few thoughts there.
No, thank you. Those are fantastic. Jenny added in the chat, I have folks build things like this into their yearly evaluations. This way is an easy way to point back to this as part of their job. Professional development is built into all staff position descriptions, which also helps. So I think that's definitely a great way to handle things as well. Something that I can share, especially when we've done cross training at my institutions, we will often like have kind of set out a formal like agreement which outlines exactly like for how long this cross training might occur and how much time might be spent. So like, again, working academic libraries, it might be, okay, during the spring semester, um, this person is going to spend like 2 hours a week working at the circulation desk, kind of building some skills with like, or working at the reference desk, building some skills with reference, outlining very clearly like, there is a defined amount of time kind of per week, a kind of defined endpoint, which kind of helps build some structure so that like, they kind of know that time is dedicated for training, but also that they don't dedicate so much time that they start to lose track of their other things. And so that has been a really successful thing. I have an example of a cross-training plan that I'm happy to share, if that would be of use for anyone. Does anyone else have any thoughts or things that they do to help their staff balance time between building new skills, but also meeting all of their kind of regular tasks? All right. So maybe another question is kind of perhaps the flip side of this. What do you do when you encounter staff who maybe are resistant to upskilling, or maybe like an opportunity is presented to them to like build new skills and they just don't want to? How do you handle staff resistance or staff hesitance? And I will grab that link to share with folks while if anyone wants to start responding. Dorothy.
Um, I think keeping a sense of humor is helpful in a situation like that, and takes a great deal of nudging and patience, and then, if needed, putting things into performance evaluation, goals and objectives and expectations. Um, that, if there's somebody who is big time resisting, I mean, it can get into discipline action as well. But hopefully the nudges work, and then again, that team approach, the peer learning really helping out to um, kind of move everybody along and have some enthusiasm and energy behind it. So, and hopefully then in the hiring process, you are looking for people who are eager to learn, and part of it is learning that balance, being able to get your regular duties done, responsibilities, as well as keeping up with things, and seeing it as something exciting, exciting to be learning. So those are some of the ways that seem to have been helpful along the way with resistors.
Thank you. Lindsay.
Plus one to everything Dorothy said. At a certain point, it does need to be like, this is your job. You need to learn this, or, we're going to have to talk about that in your evaluation. But also in libraries, we all have had coworkers, I'm sure, that have been there for forever. And they're not interested in change so much, or they're very resistant to change. And as someone that's taught adults for my whole adult life, like motivation is everything. No one's going to learn if they're not motivated to learn. And adults especially really need to see like what's in it for me. So when I have someone that's really resistant, I want to figure out what specifically they're resisting. Is it the general idea of change? Is it that they feel too much pressure and they feel like they can't do their current job and also upskill? Is it they feel like they just don't have time? They don't like the format? Like, what is it specifically that's causing the problem for them? And, that takes time to go and investigate. It's easier just to be like, this is your job. But long term, it can be really helpful to really identify those specific objections and then try to figure out either how to accommodate those or just have a real heart to heart. Like, listen, like, I get that this is something maybe you don't want to add to your job duties, but here's X, Y, and Z. It'll make your life easier, it'll make your colleagues' life easier, whatever. But I always want to come back to like, okay, you're a person, I'm a person. Like, let's talk about this. What is the actual problem, and how can we work together to address it? I really like someone said peer learning can be really helpful because your peers often have the same concerns, but maybe they come around and maybe they're more likely to be someone that the resistor would respect and be more receptive to. So.
Great, thank you. Couple of comments coming to the chat. Jenny says Dorothy hit the nail on the head. At a certain point, it does have to become a disciplinary cause if the resistance is getting to that point. Sarah added, in my experience, support from supervisor/administration is key. We're lucky to have a leader who not only supports our employees' professional development, but advocates for it vocally at library-wide meetings and meetings with her leadership team, which then trickles down throughout the organization. And then Dorothy added, like, yes, it's something is happening at home when they're extra. Is there something happening at home where they're in an extra stressful period? So there can be so much stuff going on in people's lives that can contribute to everything. But I think like Sarah had a really good point about like having a culture of professional development kind of across the library, really coming from the top down. Um, I'm curious, like, do you all find yourselves working at places where you do feel like there's a strong interest in kind of building in professional development staff, or is it something that maybe you have to fight for a little harder for yourself and for your team? And if so, like, how have you been successful in doing that? Sarah.
Yeah, so I've had different experiences. What I've been sharing today is based on, where I currently work. I've had other experiences that were not so supportive. And for instance, in a previous job, ironically enough, I was the instruction coordinator. It was a much smaller library, but because I was the instruction coordinator, folks started coming to me from different departments saying, "Hey, we're getting a lot of questions about this. Do you know anything about it?" I mean, some of the stuff I was like, "Yeah, sure," or maybe ALA or ACRL had just, kind of put something out, and I was like, I've seen something about this recently. Let me dig up that resource and I'll share it with you. And that kind of just snowballed into everybody started coming to me for professional development and or training resources and things like that. And it was interesting because it was everybody, all the way from like our uh, I guess temporary student workers all the way up to, managers on the leadership team. However, when I approached the director of the library at the time, she wasn't interested at all in doing anything with that information. And so that kind of put me in an odd kind of middle ground position. And I mean, the librarian in me, I don't want to send somebody away when they come to me seeking help or support. I'm not going to be like, no, sorry, that's not my job. I mean, so eventually I just kind of kept advocating for training and professional development library wide. And then eventually that turned into a more formalized program where, like this group today has already talked about, there was a lot of cross training, there was a lot of just open discussions. And it wasn't so much that it was a, rigid schedule or regimented program or anything like that. It was more of a, among everybody here, we have a lot of knowledge. Let's share, let's get better about communicating these things, and helping one another. And then, if we find that something comes up that we still need maybe external, resources or training, then that's something that I can, work on finding, for us, or, things like that. And thankfully, and probably because we're a much smaller library, but thankfully, we were able to do that, and it really didn't cost our organization much financially. I mean, there was some time commitment, especially on my part, but I was happy to do it in that, it it really allowed folks to feel like they had that they were stakeholders in their own professional development and career development, but that also they were capable, I guess, of um, supporting those who reported to them, in their further training, and things like that. So, yeah, it was an interesting experience, but maybe a little bit unique, and others might be experiencing something similar.
Thank you. Dorothy.
Um, in the 1990s, our public library had taken on Peter Senge's learning organization concepts. So, including things like shared vision, team learning, personal mastery, where everybody's responsible for their own learning. So, it was a real culture of learning. And it really brought up reward for creativity as well, but it included, like in my unit, we were prized with creativity for being able to balance our workload. Um, and so that, it gave us kind of an uplifting energy to the work, even when the challenges came about. And we tried as with that team learning how to solve problems. And but it did take years to get to being high performing with that as an organization. But it's so embedded now that people starting maybe not even have heard of Peter Senge, you know. But it's all part of the culture. And Maryland had taken it on as well for all public libraries to go through certain training of those concepts of Peter Senge. So that was very successful for us long term.
Can you type that name in the chat? Thank you. Anyone else have any kind of initial thoughts on this question? So we've already touched on this in a few different ways, but I'm also curious, like when it comes to upskilling your staff, what barriers have you encountered and how have you overcome those barriers? Are there other barriers that you've encountered that we haven't touched upon already today? Dorothy?
Yes, I have a thought. This is actually from a colleague, so I'm not experiencing it myself, but um, someone starting work who is younger, right out of college, and kind of thinks it's okay to um, disappear from the office for a while, like maybe in the stairwell of the building, and take calls or instead of like formal breaks, I don't know, just kind of needing to get away. So I don't know if this is the way I look at it is sort of a lack of workplace, being in the workplace skills. And also, I have a family member in a whole different organization, company, uh, experiencing some of the same things where people without the experience of working on the younger side um, really need, when they're starting work, they really need a different kind of onboarding, about sort of basic workplace expectations. Um, Doing the work itself, being really good at it, but having some of these other issues of, I don't know, not understanding um, communication as well, and some of those basic expectations of the workplace.
Thank you. What other barriers have folks encountered with staff development? Lindsay?
I like that Dorothy brings up that point that maybe someone doesn't know the culture, like how to be professional. And so I think what happens a lot of the times is that we assume someone, maybe to tie it back to like resisting, like we assume someone's resisting or we assume someone's like doing something intentionally. And I always want to say, like, come back and like get to know that person and figure out what's really going on. Like, maybe someone has something going on in their life. Maybe they have limited work experience. Maybe they're coming from someplace else that had different mores for around working. And you can probably also tie that too to, diversity in the profession. At the library that I worked at, a lot of the people of color just like quit like one after the other. And if we had taken time to really get to know those people, what their concerns were about work, they would have been more likely to stay there. For some reason, that environment wasn't working for them. So I just always want to say, people are individuals. We should always assume good intentions. If there is some sort of barrier that someone is putting up, whether it's resisting or just failing to complete something, just really getting to know what's going on with them and why it's not working for them, and maybe figure out how the workplace is being perceived by them, because then you're more likely to be able to retain them and help them be really successful at work. So I always really want to approach people with like, I want you to be successful. I can see something's not working. Let's talk about that and really figure out what we can do. And even if you can't do anything, just validating someone's experience, I think, can go a really long way.
Thank you. I think it's a really good point also, just the fact that like some people don't always know what they can and can't ask for. I remember back when I was first like a brand new librarian, like I would sometimes like see ads for like webinars or things like that, but I would like just wasn't really sure whether I could ask. And I worked in a really supportive, wonderful library. I just like, as a very timid, new librarian, I was worried about like looking dumb. I'm like, oh, maybe I should know this stuff already. So I wasn't always like willing to advocate for myself. And I think, especially with new staff members, I think it's always good when we can look out for them and like help them, identify opportunities that they might be interested in and like reach out to them out there, but also like make sure they know that it is okay to ask about attending webinars or doing some kind of professional development. Obviously, funding becomes a whole issue in of itself, but at least letting people know that like you are encouraged to look for opportunities to develop your skills. And like that's something that is always welcome in this role. Maureen added in the chat, choosing professional development to match institutional priorities is a challenge when those priorities change constantly. Ooh, yeah, that's a tricky one to navigate. Does anyone else have any like comments along those lines or encountered anything similar? So coming up on quarter to the hour, are there questions that any of you have for the group that you want to ask or that haven't been talked about today? Like what other questions do you have? What other like comments or ideas do you want to share or like get some collective brain power on? I can keep asking questions, but I'm sure y'all have some also. Okay, excellent. Um, Diana asked, does anyone have any go-to training slash upskilling resources folks would recommend exploring? I don't want to necessarily be that guy, but I did co-write a book about library staff training. I'll post the link in the chat. Um, I'm also like always happy to talk like offline. Like you don't have to buy the book. Like I'm also happy to share everything. So I'm always happy to talk through ideas about library staff training, and please feel free to email me. And then Lindsay posted like Web Junction has some really great free webinars. Niche Academy, another really great resource. One thing that talk about a lot in the book is that like where I've worked, we've had like library committees focused on staff training. And so really just leveraging the expertise of your existing staff, especially if you don't have much of a budget or budgets are declining, like letting staff train other staff can be a really effective, cost-effective way and can also be really tailored to the unique needs of your library. Another question that came in, what are some of the top needs that people are currently seeing in your staff? Thank you, Dorothy. I would say like the top need, at least like in my institution right now, feels like actually like people are just feeling some training fatigue. I feel like we've had to spend so much energy on AI, and we've also just had like some staff vacancies where folks have had to like step in and kind of be like work at academic libraries to be a temporary liaison to other areas. Like people are just kind of exhausted, and I think not everyone is looking for opportunities to like build new skills, which I think, is totally fair at some point. Like, I think right now is a good point for my staff to be like, let's step back for a moment and just catch our breath for a minute. Karen mentioned emergency management procedures, Narcan, trauma-informed librarianship. From a public library's perspective, I know those are definitely kind of skills that are in high need right now. Anyone else encountering kind of some common needs among their staff? Does anyone else have any other questions they'd like to ask for the group? Well, I certainly don't want to keep folks around for longer than needed, but I will post in the chat just a little evaluation form. Please let us know like how this went, what we could do better, but also if there are future topics you want to see the Learning Roundtable host either training explorations like this that are discussion focused or just maybe some kind of like other webinars or development opportunities, please let us know. We really want to create content that's going to be useful for you. If you're willing, please fill out that form. Otherwise, again, anyone has any last questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, you can certainly enjoy the rest of your Monday, whether it's 40 degrees or 90 degrees, wherever you are.